Guys, from this point forward, there's going to be a lot of spoilers for the movie Longlegs, so if you haven't seen it, stop watching, stop listening, go see the movie, and come back and listen to our review. Thanks. Welcome back to Movie Time with the Boys for episode number 4 with myself, Luke Frost, and my lovely Welsh co-host, John Davis. Say hi, John.
Hi, John.
We slightly dropped the ball again due to me double bucking plans, being lazy, and quite frankly enjoying what is left of summer at the lake. Going forward into fall and winter, though, as usual, we plan on making Movie Time with the Boys a more regular thing. This has always been for fun. We love doing it. Our only sponsors are our own bank accounts, and we plan on staying ad-free for the entirety of this podcast's life. This week we're going to be discussing the psychological thriller Longlegs, written and directed by Osgood Perkins, featuring Nicolas Cage, Micah Monroe, Blair Underwood, and many others. But before that, we're just going to do a quick catch-up. John, how's your week? How have you been?
It's been weeks, but yeah, good. Not much to write home about. Not been doing much, just been spending summer out in the sun, walking dogs, working, playing games, watching films. Nothing too crazy. Yourself?
Yeah, you actually were responsible for teaching me that there are other fun games other than Warzone to play. I've been playing a lot of Apex Legends with you. I'm learning slowly, usually the bottom of the lobby, but we're getting there. Other than that, spending time at the lake. Steph bought a paddleboard, so we've been messing around on that.
Nice.
Rio nearly killed himself yesterday. Rio's our dog, by the way, people who are listening. We were on the paddleboard, and Steph and him were like in the lake, and he saw a goose and decided to swim after the goose into the lake. And Steph jumped off to get him. And then I was watching from the shore, and I was like, I think I need to go in. So I sprinted, and as soon as I dived into the water, I inhaled a breath full of water. So I was like coughing and spluttering. So the three of us are all out there. Thankfully, this guy I knew on the shore came out and got the paddleboard, and then I helped Rio get back in and Steph swam back in. But yeah, it's kind of sketchy for a minute.
You've also reminded me of a dog story as well, because that's our lives now.
Let's go, dog stories.
Simo's been dancing with a skunk for like the last couple of weeks, just out back around 8 p.m. every night. This time I don't really recall the barking and the shouting and anything like that, but I was like 8:30, I'm like, right, it's time to get him in because he's going to be a dickhead otherwise. Went out back, I was like, oh, it fucking stinks out here. It's like, what's going on? I was like, oh, smelled like burning plastic or like burning rubber.
Oh God, I know.
Like a very kind of like chemically horrible smell. I was like, oh, it stinks out here. It's like, Simo again. And like I pushed him through the door, got him in, and like you run past Em, and Em was like, oh, what's that smell? And I went past as well. I was like, oh, what's that smell? I was like, I don't know where it is. I think next door. Perhaps they're doing something to their car or something, and just it absolutely stinks. It's bumping out there. And then Simo, obviously being a dickhead, comes in, rubs himself over all of the rugs and any kind of throw on any of the settees. I mean, like, it smells so bad. It smells so bad. I'm like, wait, went around the back, and I was like, it smells in patches here. I was like, what the fuck is this? So I had a quick Google. I was like, because I know he's been dancing with a skunk. I was like, what does a skunk smell like? First thing comes up was rotten eggs. I was like, it's not that. And then you continue reading, and it goes on to say like, and then after a while, it'll smell to a burning rubber kind of thing, and it's noxious and it gets in your throat and all this kinds of stuff. So I came back in the house with a really fucking tight chest. And I'm like, that is rank. He's been hit by a skunk. And then we had to spend the next hour just bathing him in a mix of baking soda and vinegar and nonsense. And then spent the next day washing all of our towels and all of our fucking throws and rugs.
Oh God.
Yeah, so he's a dickhead.
All right, it's probably time to get into the movie. But before we do, I just want to say to you, John, oh, there he is, the almost birthday boy.
Don't move.
Is it scary being an FBI agent?
The letter was left with the bodies. We have 10 letters like it over the past 30 years. And all of them signed with one word. Longlegs.
He'll kill. and kill again.
There she is! You could have been nice with me, but you didn't.
Put the gun down!
And now that has led to all of this.
All right, John, we haven't really discussed what we thought of this movie individually. Let's start off with your general thoughts.
So, from seeing the trailer and such, it looked like a weird Nick Cage film, and obviously for the last decade plus, he's been doing weird Nick Cage films. And some of them are hit or miss, some of them are just utterly fantastic. So I was looking forward, going into this, I was looking forward to seeing Nick Cage playing a weird serial killer of sorts. The trailer doesn't give away too much of a premise, which is good for these kinds of things, with it being like a psychological horror thriller type thing. So I had some hopes going into it, but also knowing that it was a horror as well, and me not being that horrid.
You're not a fan,
horrid.
Huh?
Me not being that horrid. I believe that's the term for liking horror. Me not being that horrid. I was like, I love psychological thrillers. It's one of my favorite genres, but I wasn't looking forward to the horror element of it, I guess. But well, not looking forward. Just I was looking more forward to like the psychological thriller elements than the horror, and Nick Cage being weird. What about you? What was your opinion going into it prior to having any knowledge?
Prior to seeing it, I'm like a big horror movie fan, as you know.
No,
I saw the trailers, and do you say no? I saw the trailers, and I was like, "This looks similar vibe to like Hereditary, that kind of horror that makes you like really uncomfortable to watch."
Yep.
I was really excited about it. Nicolas Cage, that intrigued me. I'm not the biggest Nicolas Cage fan in general. I love his classic moments in movies, but I wouldn't go out of my way to see a Nicolas Cage movie. I thought it was super interesting that he was playing a villain. I guess, an antagonist. That was interesting. I didn't know any of the cast. I know Micah Monroe's from It Follows, but everyone else in it is just like, I don't know who these guys are, so I don't know what to expect. So to sum it up, I was pretty excited to see it, being a horror fan, but my expectations were kind of like, we'll go and see what it's like. I'm not expecting the world here. Yeah,
because quite similar as well from a couple of friends and seen online. I didn't do too much reading to it, but some friends were like, they're like, it's a movie. I'm like, what does that mean? They're like, some people loved it, some people hated it, kind of.
Yeah.
I had a curiosity going into it for that reason as well.
Yeah, people's opinions, because I asked a lot of people what they thought before I saw it. It was very split. People were saying, don't waste your money, and others were saying, it's fantastic. And if it's split like that, I tend to err on the side of caution, where it's like, it's probably not going to be that great.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, same.
There's plenty I liked and didn't like about this film, but let's start off with what you liked about it, John.
So things I liked about Longlegs. I dug its vibe and how it looked. It reminded me very much so of like the 90s kind of psychological thrillers, like the Silence of the Lambs and Game, and just things along those kinds of lines. Just because, like the style, even the premise to a degree, was all like, it was hitting those 90s psychological thriller notes for me. It looked great, and just the general feel of the movie was uneasy. I enjoyed that, and Nick Cage looked weird as fuck.
Yeah.
That was the kind of feel of it. Like, as I said, I love psychological thrillers. They really tickle my movie bone.
I'm going to need clarification on what's a movie bone.
If you know, you know. Yeah, so as I was saying, I really like psychological thrillers. They are one of my favorite genres. And this kind of tickled that itch for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right, my movie bone.
Itchy movie bone.
So yeah, it covered a lot of that for me. Very much so the way it was shot. There's certain shots where they just lingered on things, and it's more of the what you don't see is more scary than what you do. And that kind of resonates with you a bit as well then, because it's horrible after you go back home after seeing like a thriller or a horror like that, and then you sit on your toilet and then there's an open door at the end and you're just like, It's a bit weird, isn't it? So the uneasiness of it worked well, I think.
Yeah.
Acting wise, it was fine. Story wise, there's lots of bits that seem a bit daft on reflection. And we're just talking about things I like. We're not talking about things I don't like yet. So
Yeah.
I will leave it there. Good sir.
All right. Things I liked. 90s vibe I have written down as my first thing. I think they nailed that. I only found out afterwards during the credits it was filmed in Vancouver. And I kind of got that vibe throughout. I didn't know what it was that I was picking up on, but it was like, oh, it's where we live, where I live. I can kind of tell.
I thought so too.
Yeah. There's another film called Antlers. I don't know if you ever saw that. It's filmed in Hope, I think, and a lot in Vancouver as well. And the same thing I didn't know until the end. Anyway, irrelevant. I have written down here that it reminded me a lot of, well, at least the first 2/3 of it reminded me a lot of True Detective season 1.
Fair.
A lot of Silence of the Lambs, a lot of Seven, just like you said as well. I really liked that about it. That was like the coolest thing for me. I thought Micah Monroe was great. At first, I couldn't tell if her acting was off or if it was her character style, and it was 100% the character style. She was a character that appeared to be like on the spectrum.
Gotcha. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, 100%. I'm with you on that. And yeah.
And at the start of the movie, I thought, oh, is her acting off? What's happening here? But then I realized how well she was playing this character, and then you realize more and more through the movie that why she's like that, and so on and so on. I mean, it ultimately turns out that's maybe not the case, it seems, but we'll get to that eventually. I thought Nicolas Cage as Longlegs was excellent, although I have things I didn't like, which I'll expand more on that before I get to it here. I thought the whole thing looked great, the way it was shot, the soundscape, everything. I think it was all scattered throughout the movie, but the first half more was like these weird little satanic flashes and stuff that just kind of added to my sense of dread while watching it. I watched it in the Park Theatre on Canby as well, like the old theatre.
Nice.
I love that. The 90s theatre, and it really set the scene for me. And that's a weird thing to do, but I figured it would be better to watch it there.
It's a good show. Very good show.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about things that you didn't like.
So I have a few things about it that I didn't like as much. So as I keep mentioning over and over, and whenever we do anything horror and stuff, I don't like horror, blah, 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 blah. It's not that I don't like horror. Shut your mouth. It's, I love psychological thrillers. I didn't like the supernatural element to this. I just wish that it was Nick Cage being a creepy serial killer, and he can be a Satanist all you want, but I didn't like the whole fucking devil ball in a doll thing. That was dumb. Just leave a serial killer. Serial killers are fucking creepy.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That was my biggest gripe too. I guess as we go through this, I'll tell you what I agree on you with and what I don't agree.
Okay, cool.
It was so needless. You had such a good build-up and such a good backstory. We didn't know the backstory of Longlegs, but the backstory of the actual movie. And then at the beginning, they throw in that little supernatural element like she's psychic. And I'm like, oh no. Like immediately I was like, oh no, here we go. It's True Detective season 4 again. I don't know if you've seen that, but absolute garbage.
I've watched the first episode, I think.
They just introduce this supernatural element. And then in Longlegs, it takes a back seat until the third act. And then when they find that doll in the barn, that's when it really goes off the rails for me personally.
Yeah.
It was so, I don't know, you just didn't need to, it just felt like lazy writing to me. Everyone's praising this movie for being like the scariest movie ever, but that just took me out of it completely.
It had some uneasy moments, but it's not the scariest movie ever.
A couple of the scenes were like genuinely freak me out, like in Hereditary. And this is the thing, like Hereditary is one of my favorite horror movies, and it does the same thing. It just kind of introduces this supernatural element, but it works because it's like from the off, it's like a possession film.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can tell it's like a different vibe. This is like marketed as a detective film and like
and then ends with a possession film.
Like a thriller and ends with a possession film. And it's like, what are you guys doing? Like the third act for me just ruined 100%. This movie for me.
Yeah, like the twist. like when they're all, oh, Longlegs has been with your mom all along. Like your mother being a thing. I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. But then like, oh, you've been living with him in your fucking basement for 20 years or whatever. And it's like, oh, how mean your mother laughed when you decided to be a cop. Don't you remember? Oh, wait, you don't. It's fucking dumb. The build up to it was so good. It's like a psychological thriller. There's a weird serial killer on the loose. He's killing people and we don't know how. This is great. Hopefully we'll find out how he does it at the end. He's like, oh, it's just the fucking devil possessing you via a doll with a bollock in his head.
This movie made you legitimately angry.
It did. It generally did. I really enjoyed it up to a point. I was like, this is going so well. It's 90s psychological thriller. I'm loving it. It's Seven. It's Silence of the Lambs. Giving me all these vibes. I'm like, this is good. I feel uneasy at places. Like when she's first working out the code in her house, and there's just a long shot of an open door behind her, and there's just you know how uneasy it is, and you're just like, you are literally watching that open door instead of her because you know something's going to walk past. Nothing ever walks past, and that is fantastic because you're just like, I feel uneasy, and then obviously there's something outside. That is fantastic, and then it turns out, oh, there's a devil. Like, fuck off.
Yeah, I mean, if it had been marketed as that kind of movie, I might have gone with different expectations. I'm not saying it was a terrible movie. I'm saying there was things that I loved, and there was things that just took me out of it. Like I found the twist. I found the twist with him living in her mum's basement so predictable. At the point where she goes to her mum's house and you see the cockroach come out from under there, I was like, he's in there. That's where it is.
Called it.
Like, immediately. Yeah. So that kind of ruined it for me. Anything else you didn't like? I have a few, so we can go through them, but...
just those off the top of my head. You please go along, and I'm sure I will tag along with it.
I think it could have been way scarier if Longlegs had like a second level to him. The movie It, for example, I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah,
not a great movie. It's fine, whatever. It's a horror movie.
Yeah, it's fine.
But It has this really playful side, like Longlegs does, where he's singing in the car and screaming and whatever. It's like, oh, he's kind of like, he's a weird dude, but he's not like super evil. He didn't have that super evil edge to him that we saw. We heard about the things he was doing, but he was really just like the puppet master. But it would have been like, even if it's something as simple as having a deep voice all of a sudden when he's like talking to people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a scene in True Detective season 1. So at the end where the big bad guy, the final episode starts with him in his house and he has like this southern accent drawl, and then he just switches to this English accent and it's weird as hell. Yeah. And then when they approach his farm, and spoilers for True Detective season 1 here, by the way. When they approach his farm
10 years ago.
Yeah. And you see him in the distance, and he's in Carcosa. You hear him, and his voice is like, "Come to die, little priest." And it's like just really like guttural, gets into your head. That kind of thing could have been done so much better with Longlegs, because by the end, during the interrogation scene, didn't find him scary. I was just looking at a guy with makeup on.
Yeah, with a weird face, and he did that one weird thing in the car, which was more funny than scary.
I'll tell you what, that scene where he's like, "Mommy, Daddy," that's when I knew it was Nicolas Cage. Like, I knew it was him anyway, but that's when it was like, okay, this is Nick Cage.
This is Nick Cage being Nick Cage in a Nick Cage movie.
yeah, that's where it kind of took me out of it. Like, oh, who is this guy? I was like, oh, it's Nick Cage. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like one thing I...
Like, his back character there's no fucking story to them other than, oh, he's a Satanist. Like, right, okay. What about what? So how did he become a Satanist? Why is he doing this? Why is he targeted in certain families? Like Satan? Right, okay.
This movie is absolutely begging for a prequel where you find out about him and how he ended up how he did. But Nicolas Cage has already said he never wants to play a horror character ever again. Yeah. So it's not going to happen unless they change the actor, which would just make it even worse. So it just missed so much groundwork. If the movie was like an extra half hour long, it might have got boring, but we would have found out a lot more about him and his past. If they kind of messed with timelines a little more, it could have been great.
Yeah. Overall, like 70% of the movie was great. Build up. Yeah. The feel of it was great. And then it just didn't land the ending for me. I just didn't like the supernatural bullshit to it.
We can get to the end in a little bit. Another thing that I didn't like was in the intro where the credits are rolling. Mm-hmm. It says on big on the screen, Nicolas Cage as Longlegs, and it just I know he was at the beginning of the movie.
Heard of him.
If you didn't know that, it just takes you out of it. It's like, okay, so there's no guessing anymore, like who that is. You know who did this very well? Tropic Thunder, where they had Tom Cruise
is the thing, yeah.
As what's his name? Les Grossman. And at the end of the movie, it says, Tom Cruise is Les Grossman. You're like, what? I didn't even have a clue it was him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just because he was pretty much the only main name in the cast, and obviously they want to get money off it, don't they? So
yeah,
it's the only way
but I don't know. You don't need to
advertise it, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't need to like put it in your face at the start. I don't know. That bugged me.
Perhaps it was in his contract.
Yeah. Something else I didn't like was the way Longlegs was ultimately caught, just with his travel bags at the bus stop. It was like, what?
Yeah.
You're just picking this guy up like an Uber. He's just like stood at the side of the road. I also found the final scene in the house, the detective's house, kind of like comic in a way that it shouldn't have been.
When she went to go stop the final killing?
Yeah, because there's this whole scene with the agent and his wife, and he's like, I'm going to the kitchen. She's like, I'm going to the kitchen too. He's like, yeah, but you won't be returning. And it was just like, is this supposed to be kind of funny right now? Because it's like weird but funny. That kind of bugged me a little bit. I don't want to trash the movie because there was bits that I really enjoyed, like we said.
Yeah. So as I was saying, like most of the movie is great. Like the build up, the story until the end is great. Just because the ending just did not nail it, it kind of ruins it for you a bit. But
yeah, I'll give my thoughts like towards the end. And honestly, I came out of this movie and I said to Steph, I was like, I enjoyed it. It was good. And then the more I've thought about it since, the more negatives I have. So it's kind of like took time to gestate with me, I guess. And
very similar thing. I came out and I was like, I came home and obviously Emma's like, how was it? I was like, well, I liked it for this reason, but I hated it for this reason, which is strange to come straight out of. But yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? I can understand why it's kind of split down the middle when everyone's like, oh, I loved it, or it was bullshit.
Yeah, I had a feeling our opinion would be the same on this one, to be honest, because I know you're not the biggest horror movie guy, and for me, it was like a weaker horror, so I figured it'd be the same. Yeah, I think this is a good segue. We can talk about scenes that stood out to us, scenes we liked. Would you have one or two that kind of stand out to you?
Yeah, so I touched upon it earlier. The scene where she's figuring out the cipher on her table is just like a long shot of her figuring out the cipher with just a door frame behind her leading into a kitchen. I'd say like she's taking up maybe 30% of the screen, and then the rest's kind of focused, like the main framing of it is of the door, and you feel something uneasy. You feel that something is just going to either walk past or appear behind her, or like somebody's watching her. Like that's the kind of vibe it's giving you, that kind of dread. And it lingers on it for so long that you just feel so fucking uneasy with it. You just like, there has to be something coming. There's something coming. You're just watching. Like I couldn't tell you how she figured out the cipher looking at it, because I was just fixating on this door to see what's going to show up behind her. Like shots like that felt great because it made me feel uneasy. They had a good few of those kind of long shots where like they kept the camera rolling longer than what you traditionally would see in any other kind of movie, just to kind of feel that dread while you're waiting for something to appear, but it doesn't.
Yeah. I really liked the intro scene. It just kind of shocks you where the guy gets shot at the door.
Yeah,
that was like
cool. Yeah,
that was one of those scenes that kind of just like went, oh shit, this is going to be one of those movies that makes me very uneasy and surprises me. That got my attention right away. Another one kind of similar right at the end, right before the final scene, where she gets driven to her mum's house and then the person's waiting in the car and you see her mum in the background just hold up this shotgun and blast the person in the car from the side. That was just like one of those moments. It's like, oh Jesus, so real it felt.
Yeah.
That was kind of messed up. And again, like you, I liked the suspense scene where she's figuring out the code, and then it kind of ultimately led to nothing in that particular shot.
Yeah.
It's just kind of teasing you.
Yeah.
I liked that about it. I wish we saw more of Longlegs, because the scene with him in the car where he drives to that little truck stop thing and is just the weirdest dude ever.
Yeah.
He does this creepy like thing on his face like this, and you haven't really seen his face properly until that point, is really unnerving. And also, sorry, it wasn't the intro, but the very intro where he's like at the house in the snow, and then you see him in the background, and all of a sudden he's next to the girl. Is like, whoa, okay, this is creepy.
Yeah, I like that kind of the they did it with a few shots as well, didn't they? Where it was just a square like 4:3, and then it kind of like lingers there for a while, and then kind of expands out into the full thing.
Yeah,
that was some good use
it's
of it
very
as well.
it's very shining, that shot. That's the what it reminds me of every time I see it. Another scene that I liked was the interrogation scene where Longlegs ends up wrecking himself on the table. That was like pretty well done.
Yeah, that's kind of where they dropped the whole twist type thing, didn't they? And like Nick Cage being weird is always great, no matter what film he's doing. Nick Cage being Nick Cage is fucking fantastic because Nick Cage is the best Nick Cage.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that thoroughly. But yeah, like the interrogation scene, Nick Cage just being Nick Cage was great. The twist coming in didn't fully click with me, obviously, because this FBI agent who, you know, has to be the fucking smartest candidates to work for the FBI and all this kind of shit, just forgot that Longlegs lives in your fucking basement and your mother goes murdering with him.
And also, I'm sure to get in the FBI, there's 1,000 background checks, psychological reviews. They would have picked up on one of these things. This is like a major plot hole for me.
Yeah. Same. I know it's a film, suspend disbelief and all that bullshit, but that's a bit much for that for me.
Yeah. I mean, if it's going to be marketed as a detective thriller, you need to kind of think about these things. Anyway, I'll stop banging on about that, and I don't want to shit on it too much.
Yeah, it sounds like we've shit on it a lot, but
we have. But
it's honestly, good to a point.
Like we don't. Every movie we've done so far, we've mostly enjoyed, and I enjoyed this one somewhat. But I think it's important to every review that I've listened to has been praising this movie, and I just don't agree with it. So I want to kind of give our honest opinion on it. You know,
cool.
All right, John, let's discuss some interesting facts that we learned about this movie during our research. So, me and you both love The X-Files. We've known that for a long time. The original series up to season 5, I think, were filmed here in Vancouver, maybe season 6. So, Osgood Perkins was well aware of that. He tried to model Agent Lee Harker as Scully in like the way she dresses, the way her behaviors are. So that was kind of cool, like a little throwback. I didn't really pick up on it till I read it, and I was like, a couple of things, like
the dress, but not how she acts. They're very different characters.
Yeah, I think it kind of missed the mark with that, but it was a cool little fact. We touched on it earlier, but Nick Cage has come out since this and said he doesn't want to play a horror serial killer character again. He enjoyed making the film, but it's just not his kind of character.
It is very interesting for him because he did great as a villain.
Yeah, I think he did great. I think it's something he could really channel and do again if he wanted to, but it's not going to happen, unfortunately.
So shot-wise in Longlegs, did you pick up on any of the like devil lurking in the background shots?
One of them at the end. I hear there's way more than just the one, though.
I think I picked up on 2 watching it.
Right.
It's usually like when they close a door or something that you just see him in the window behind it. I saw it once or twice. Pretty freaky, and I was like, oh, that's cool. But also terrible because I didn't want there to be a devil in it.
Yeah, I mean the horror elements they nailed. I think if they did a horror movie and a thriller movie separately, they would have been great. But together, the blend just didn't work.
No.
All right, give me your top 3 Nick Cage films. We'll see if they're different to mine. They're definitely going to be different to mine because my list's a bit weird.
So, although Nick Cage has been pumping out some great weird stuff over the last decade, whenever I think of Nick Cage, I go back to the action movies of the 90s. So you got like Face Off, you got Con Air, and Snake Eyes is good, but it's not top 3. Con Air, my daddy's coming home on July 14th. But Con Air is slamming just because it has such a good cast throughout. Everyone is in it.
It's on my list. I'll tell you that now.
Face Off is fantastic because Nick Cage is weird as fuck in that because he gets to play 2 different people. I'm going to say Snake Eyes for now, and I'm going to let you go. And then while you're going, I'm going to read his filmography and get back to you.
All right. So I got Con Air as my number 1. I love that movie. He looks ridiculous. He sounds ridiculous. The cast's amazing. Number 2, I have like a tie, and he's not the main character in this one, but I really enjoyed the movie, and it was super original for its time. Kick-Ass. I always forget he's in it.
Okay.
He's great.
I forgot he's in there for a bit, wasn't he?
Yeah, his death scene is... Sorry, spoilers. His death scene is brutal in that as well. That's tied with Face Off for me, because Face Off's just weird.
Banging.
And And then my final one, which is up there in my top
I know where it is. Can I guess where it is?
Yeah.
Ghost Rider.
No, my final one is one that I don't think you've seen. It's Pig.
I haven't seen Pig yet.
Yeah, it's not his usual character. He steps outside the norm again, like he did for this, for Longlegs, and he nails it. He plays this executive chef that's gone rogue, not in a John Wick way. There you go, John Wick reference, weekly.
Hey,
he plays an amazing character, and the story, the vibe, everything's amazing about that movie. So that's my 3.
That's fair.
To sum it up for me, I think I said a lot of the things that I needed to say during what I liked and what I didn't like, but for me, as I said, it was a movie that I initially really enjoyed, and then the more time I've spent away from it, the more it's annoyed me to think about the plot holes, the random supernatural element they threw in without warning. It was great characters thrown into a script that worked for 2/3 of a movie, and in the third act they just kind of went ham and did crazy things with the story, and it seemed like a cop-out. Ultimately, I'm going to give it 6 almost birthday boys out of 10. Probably the lowest I rated a movie on the podcast so far, I think. Nicolas Cage, fantastic. Micah Monroe, fantastic. Blair Underwood, he was great. Bit weird. Enjoyed the movie to an extent. Third act killed it for me.
Yeah, so very similar vibe for myself. As I've stated several times now, I loved the psychological thriller element of it. I loved how it was portrayed very 90s. It felt like those movies that it was clearly taken from. And yeah, again, just enjoyed it up to a point with the whole twist, and it just didn't make sense for a smart detective movie to turn around and go like, oh, well, actually, no, you've been living with this guy all along. Oh, well, is the devil. Have fun with that. It just, yeah, like it was great up until a point. It didn't stick the landing for me, and that's quite annoying, to be honest. And like yourself, I came out of the theater, I was like, oh, that was okay. And the more I thought about it, it's more plot holes, more kind of annoyance from it. I'm in no rush to watch it again. I liked the setting. I like how it was shot in places. I liked the acting throughout. It's just the story just didn't nail it for me. So rating it, I would probably give it 5 out of 10. So I'd say it's more of a middle legs instead of a long legs for me.
Cool. So I've been criticized recently about putting the good stuff in the pod after the credits, and people miss it. The stats that I've seen, people are not listening this deep into the pod, so they're missing some decent stuff at the end. So we're going to put what we would usually put at the end right now, before the end. Our friend Andrew has given us a little 2-minute audio review of what he thought of the movie.
All right, so I just can't start talking about a movie and give my random thoughts. I need some type of structure. So as a tribute to David Letterman, I'll do my top 5 thoughts of Longlegs, the movie. Okay, so number 1, I thought the movie started off really well with some excellent framing. It gave it a real refined, kind of different feel than what I was expecting, and there was some really great typography, which I really appreciated, and putting those two things together I thought was like a really nice, tasty treat to start the movie. Number 2, super love the setting. Feels like a late 90s in the Lower Mainland, which I was very into, and also the shout out to the Mariners on a hot streak was a really nice touch. Very cool. Had that like misty, hazy fall feel, which I was a big fan of. Number 3, the first kill scene scared the shit out of me so bad that I spilled about half my popcorn on the floor. I should also probably mention that I scare quite easy, and that scary movies are not really my thing, but I'm trying to get over it. Okay, number 4, it took me a minute to spot Nick Cage, but once I did, I was kind of thinking whenever he was on a screen, I was like, oh, there's Nick Cage, which is cool, but also pretty brutal for the movie because it kind of took me totally out of the story, but he did an excellent job, so whatever. Number 5, thought the ending was a little soft. Thought it was well crafted, but I was kind of hoping for something a little bit bigger. The movie had like so much hype around it. I think I was expecting maybe a bit more of a splash. That's not to say that it wasn't well done, but it just wasn't one of those things where it was kind of like a hell yeah ending. Those are my top 5 thoughts on Longlegs.
Okay, so thank you for listening again. We've just gone through Longlegs. Myself and Luke had opinions on it, to say the least. Nick Cage is great as Nick Cage. Nick Cage starring Nick Cage in Nick Cage is always fun. Next week we will be tackling Alien Romulus. I know Luke and I are both big fans of the Alien franchise, so if you want to find out our opinions on the new movie, listen in. Laters.
Bye.